Don't get behind the wheel, it's a trap set by your son, the mechanic told me. It turns out. My name is Richard Hale, and I have lived long enough to know that betrayal rarely arrives with loud footsteps. It comes quietly, softly, sometimes in the voice of someone you love more deeply than yourself. That morning, I walked into Mason's auto shop for what I thought would be a routine check before a long drive. I had my coffee in hand and a lightness in my chest. My son, Evan, had finally reached out after months of silence, inviting me to spend the weekend with him. For a father who had spent years trying to mend old wounds, that small gesture felt like sunlight after a long winter. I thought it meant healing. I thought it meant hope. I had no idea it meant danger. When Mason, the mechanic, wiped his hands and walked toward me, his face looked strange, pale, nervous, almost frightened. "Richard," he said quietly, "I need you to listen to me carefully." I frowned. "What's wrong?" He glanced at my car, then back at me. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't get behind the wheel. Not today. Not tonight. Not ever, until I fix what's been done." I felt my chest tighten. "What are you talking about?" Mason exhaled slowly, the way men do when they know the truth will cut deep. "There's been tampering, to your brakes. And from the fingerprints, the tools used, it wasn't a stranger." He hesitated. "Richard, I think your son set a trap for you." For a moment, the world simply stopped. My son? My only son? In that breath of silence, everything inside me cracked, yet I didn't shout, and I didn't panic. I just felt a cold stillness settle into my bones, the kind that comes when life shifts beneath your feet. And that was the beginning, the moment I realized my quiet life was about to unravel in ways I never imagined. I stood there in the middle of Mason's auto shop, the smell of oil and metal lingering in the cold morning air, trying to understand how a son could wish harm on the man who raised him. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something much older, sorrow mixed with disbelief. Mason placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Richard, I've known you for 20 years. You're a good man. Whatever happened between you and Evan, it doesn't justify this." I nodded, though my mind was far away, drifting back through the years like pages blowing in the wind. Evan hadn't always been distant. As a boy, he used to run into my arms the moment I walked through the door. We'd fix bikes together, build small wooden boats, and sit on the porch eating the grilled cheese sandwiches he used to love. His laughter once filled the house so completely that even the quiet moments felt warm. But things changed after his mother, Linda, and I divorced. She believed I spent too much time building my construction business and not enough time at home. The truth was more complicated, but the court didn't care for truth, only for who could present the cleaner story. Linda won custody. Evan grew up in her house. I became the weekend parent, then the occasional parent, and eventually, the outsider. As Evan entered his teenage years, he grew colder. He'd speak to me with politeness, yes, but not with affection. He believed the stories Linda told, that I chose work over family, that I didn't fight hard enough for him, that I didn't care the way a real father should. I tried to explain. I tried to show up. But no matter what I did, the distance only grew. By the time he became an adult, he barely returned my calls. I kept reaching out anyway, holding on to a hope that maybe someday he would remember the father who once held his bike steady as he learned to ride. So when he finally invited me to spend a weekend with him, just him, I thought maybe things were turning around. But standing in that shop, hearing Mason's words echo like a bell tolling the end of something important, I realized how wrong I had been. If my son truly tampered with my car, then something deep, dark, and painful had taken root inside him. And I needed to understand why. I looked at Mason. "Fix the car. Don't say a word to anyone." "Richard," he said softly, "what are you planning?" I breathed in slowly, letting the cold air steady me. "Nothing angry. Nothing foolish," I replied. "I just want the truth." But deep inside, a different truth was already forming, quiet, patient, and sharper than any blade. The drive home was strangely silent. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't make any calls. I just let the quiet fill the spaces where anger could have lived. I've learned over the years that anger makes men foolish. Silence, on the other hand, turns them sharp. When I reached my house, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the wooden grain beneath my fingertips. I thought of Evan. His smile when he was 5. His frown when he was 15. The thin line of cold distance he held at 28. I dialed his number. He answered with a hint of forced warmth. "Dad? Everything good? You still coming this weekend?" I studied his voice. Calm. Clean. Not a crack in it. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'll be there." He exhaled like he'd been waiting for that answer. "Good. I already planned everything." Planned. The word felt different now. After we hung up, I walked around my house slowly. Pictures of Evan sat on shelves and mantels. Him in a baseball uniform, him holding a fishing rod, him standing awkwardly at his high school graduation. Memories lived everywhere, but they felt like shadows of something I once held but could never reclaim. I needed to understand him. Not as the child I loved, but as the man he had become. So the next day, I drove, carefully in a rental car, to Linda's house. My ex-wife lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood a few towns away. I hadn't stepped foot onto her property in almost a decade. She opened the door with a surprised expression, arms crossed, hair pulled into a loose bun. "Richard? What brings you here?" I didn't dance around it. "It's about Evan." Her eyes sharpened. "What about him? Did he ever blame me for something I didn't know about?" Linda sighed, leaning against the doorway. "Evan blames you for everything, Richard. You know that." "No," I said softly. "I mean, did something happen that you never told me?" For a moment, she hesitated. And that hesitation told me more than any words. She looked away. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" She folded her arms. "Evan found out about your old life insurance policy." I frowned. "What about it?" "The one you took out when he was 12. The one he thought named him the sole beneficiary." My heart stopped. "But it doesn't. I changed that years ago." "I know," she said. "But he doesn't. He still thinks there's a large payout waiting for him, if you were to pass away." The room tilted for a moment. I steadied myself on the porch railing. "Linda," I whispered, "why didn't you tell me this?" She gave me a tired, brittle smile. "Because I didn't think he would ever cross that kind of line. He's angry, yes. Resentful, definitely. But capable of that? I didn't believe it." I closed my eyes. A son who believed I owed him money. A son who believed I owed him my life. A son who thought my death would fix his disappointments. "Richard," Linda said gently, "is he in trouble?" I shook my head. "No. Not yet." "Tell me what's going on." "I can't," I said quietly. "But thank you for telling me." As I turned to leave, she reached out. "Be careful. Evan isn't the boy you raised. He's been listening to the wrong people for years." I nodded, though my mind was already 100 miles away. I walked to my car with the slow, quiet steps of a man who had just discovered the ground beneath him was softer than he ever realized. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Mason's words, Linda's confession, and Evan's strangely calm voice on the phone. But somewhere amid that storm of thoughts, a plan began to take shape. Not a plan of anger. Not a plan of confrontation. A plan of truth, quiet, steady, and impossible to escape. If Evan had set a trap for me, then I needed to set one for him. Not to hurt him. Not to punish him. But to show him exactly who he had become, and who I still was. A father. A man. Someone who refused to break, even when betrayed. And that decision. was the true beginning of my quiet revenge. The weekend arrived with a gray, heavy sky, one of those days where the clouds sit low enough to feel like they're watching. I left early, not in my repaired car but in the same rental I'd quietly picked up 2 days before. My real car remained locked in Mason's shop, untouched, waiting. Just like I needed it to. When I pulled up to Evan's driveway, I didn't drive in. I parked a few houses down, far enough that he wouldn't see me arrive. I wanted to watch first. To observe. To understand the man my son had become. From my distance, I saw him come out of the house. He looked anxious, checking his watch, glancing up and down the street, pacing with restless energy. He was waiting for me, in the car he believed I would be driving. The car with the tampered brakes. I swallowed the ache in my chest. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a boy waiting for his father. But I knew better than to trust appearances. I walked toward him slowly. He didn't see me until I was almost at the end of the driveway. "Dad!" he called out, startled. I didn't hear your car." "That's because I didn't bring it," I said calmly. His eyes flickered. A tiny shift. Barely visible. But I saw it. "Oh," he said lightly. "Right. Well, come inside." Inside his house, everything was neat. Too neat. Like someone preparing to impress a man they planned to betray. He offered me coffee, but I shook my head. "Evan," I began gently, "why did you invite me here?" He sat opposite me, hands clasped, foot tapping slightly. "Well, you know. I thought we should spend time together. Make up for lost years." "Lost years," I repeated softly. "Who do you think lost them?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked away. "I'm not here to argue, Dad." "No," I said, holding his gaze, "you're not." Silence stretched between us. It had weight, thickness, something unspoken hanging just out of reach. Then I leaned back, my voice calm. Too calm. "You know, Evan. Mason called me." His body tensed. Just for a second. But again, I saw it. "Mason," he repeated, eyes narrowing. "What does he have to do with anything?" "He told me there was tampering. With my car." Evan let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Dad, come on. Why would anyone tamper with your car?" "That's what I wanted to know," I replied. So I did some thinking. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a small envelope on the table. He stared at it like it was a venomous snake. "What's that?" "You tell me," I said. He slowly opened the envelope. Inside were photos. Photos I had taken from a security camera I had installed outside my house years ago, after a string of break-ins on our street. Photos of him. Walking into my garage at night. Carrying tools. Working under the hood of my vehicle. Leaving quietly. His face drained of color. "Dad, I can explain." I spoke softly. "Then explain." His mouth opened, but no words came. His hands shook. His breath grew shallow. And then he whispered the truth he'd been holding inside. I didn't mean to hurt you. I needed money. I needed it badly. My debts, they're bad, Dad. Really bad. And I thought the insurance, it would solve everything." "You thought my death would solve everything," I corrected gently. He lowered his head. "I wasn't thinking straight." "You were thinking clearly enough to loosen my brakes," I said quietly. "You were thinking clearly enough to walk into my garage at night." His shoulders trembled. "You're right," he whispered. "I messed up. I messed up bad." I let the silence stretch. He needed to feel the weight of his own choices. Then I leaned forward, voice steady. "Evan, tell me something. If I had died on that road, if my car had gone off a cliff or into a tree, would you have lived with that?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was the confession. But revenge, real, lasting revenge, isn't about screaming or punishing. It's about revealing truth so deeply that it reshapes a man. And now came the part he never saw coming. I stood up. Come with me. He looked up, confused. Where? For a drive, I said. He froze. A drive? Yes. But not in my car. We walked outside, and I led him toward the rental. His relief was visible. But he had no idea that the real trap, the one I set, was just beginning. Evan slid into the passenger seat of the rental car with stiff, uneasy movements. When I closed the driver's door beside him, the quiet space felt heavy. Two men breathing in the same small world, one who had betrayed, and one who had been betrayed. I started driving with the smooth, steady pace of someone in complete control of himself. Evan stared ahead, not daring to look at me. We drove through his neighborhood, then out toward the open road. After several minutes, he whispered, "Where are we going?" "To see something important," I replied. His throat clicked as he swallowed. He must have imagined all sorts of punishments. Angry confrontations, police stations, threats, shouting. But he didn't understand me at all. He never had. I turned onto a quiet road that led to the edge of Riverbend Canyon, a steep overlook just outside town. There was a parking area at the top, fenced off with old wooden rails. The view was beautiful, the kind that calms the heart while reminding you how small you are. I parked the car and stepped out. Evan followed reluctantly. The wind brushed over us, cool and sharp. I stood at the edge of the overlook for a long moment before speaking. "Evan," I said quietly, "I drove this road for 30 years. Your mother hated it, but I always loved the way it made me feel. Peaceful. Free." He shifted behind me, uncomfortable. "Dad, what is this about?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. "This road is where my brakes would have failed," I said softly. "At the downhill turn. At a speed I usually drive. I would have gone straight through that railing." He let out a shaky breath. "Dad, please. Do you know what kind of death that would have been?" I asked gently. "Quick? Painful? Would I have had time to think of you? Think of all the years I tried to reach out?" He shook his head, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "I didn't want you dead. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to plan a weekend with me," I said. "Clearly enough to invite me on a long drive. Clearly enough to choose this road." His knees wobbled. He grabbed the rail for balance. "Dad, I'm sorry. I swear, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. The debts, they were crushing me. I owe money to people who don't forgive mistakes." I nodded slowly. "I know." His head snapped up. You know." "I talked to Linda," I said. "And I looked into more than you realize. The debts, the calls, the threats. I know everything now." He stepped back like the wind had pushed him. "So what happens now? Are you going to turn me in?" "No," I said simply. He blinked in pure disbelief. "You're not." "No. I'm not interested in sending you to prison. That would be too easy." His breath hitched. "Then what?" I walked back toward the car and took out a folder I had placed on the seat. I handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside were 3 things. A copy of my updated insurance policy, showing he was no longer the beneficiary. A debt repayment agreement, notarized and drafted by a lawyer I met 2 days ago. A letter, handwritten by me. Evan scanned the pages with trembling hands. What is this?" "It's your chance," I said softly. "Your last one." He looked up, eyes red, confusion mixing with shame. "The insurance," I explained, "is so you know there's no reward for my death. Nothing to gain. Not a cent." He nodded slowly. "The repayment plan," I continued, "is a loan from me. Enough to clear your debts. But not a gift. You will repay every dollar monthly with interest, not because I need the money, but because you need responsibility.
He looked stunned.
Dad, why would you help me after what I did?
I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step closer.
I just let the words fall from me like quiet truth. Because revenge isn't destroying you, Evan. It's giving you a mirror you can't look away from. He stared at me, breathing unevenly.
And the letter, he whispered.
What's in the letter? That, I said, is for you to read when you're alone. Tears finally spilled from his eyes.
Dad.
I don't deserve this.
I nodded. No, you don't.
But I'm giving it anyway. He sank down onto the wooden railing, head in his hands. I stood beside him for a long, silent moment. Then I said the words that shaped the rest of his life. You will spend the next 5 years rebuilding your integrity.
Not for me.
Not for the debt collectors.
For yourself. He looked up slowly, shattered and humbled. And if I don't? He asked quietly.
Then, I said with calm finality, you'll lose the last person who still believes you can be better.
He closed his eyes.
A broken man realizing what he almost became. And in that moment, the real justice began, not by force but by truth. We stayed there at the overlook for a long time, the wind carrying away some of the tension, leaving only quiet understanding behind.
Evan didn't speak much. He didn't need to.
I could feel the weight of his guilt lifting slowly, replaced by the first hints of responsibility.
It was subtle, but it was there.
On the drive back, he remained silent in the passenger seat. I kept my focus on the road, letting the engine hum fill the empty spaces between us. Silence had always been our teacher, in childhood, in adolescence, and now, in this fragile moment of reckoning. When we returned to his house, he turned to me, a little less guarded, a little more human.
Dad.
I don't know how to thank you, he said quietly.
For everything.
For seeing me, even after. I didn't do it for thanks, I replied gently. I did it so you could see yourself. That's the real lesson here. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and shame. I could see a man beginning to understand the consequences of his choices, a man who had almost lost himself, but who now had a chance to rebuild. Before I left, I handed him the letter.
Read this tonight, I said.
When it's just you. And think about it carefully. He accepted it with trembling hands.
I will, Dad. I promise.
I drove home, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Not because I had punished him. Not because I had humiliated him. But because justice doesn't always need to be loud or destructive. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and perfectly timed. Over the next weeks, I watched from a distance. Evan began taking responsibility for his debts. He called me more often. Our conversations were cautious at first, but slowly, they became honest.
There was no false warmth. No pretending.
Just the slow, careful rebuilding of trust that had been broken years ago. I realized something profound during that time. Revenge is not about hurting someone in return. Revenge, true revenge, is about creating a reflection so clear and unavoidable that a person must confront the truth of their actions themselves. It's about guiding them toward their own realization, and sometimes, it's about giving them a second chance, even if they do not deserve it. Weeks turned into months, and the anger that had threatened to poison my heart dissipated. I learned that patience can be stronger than rage, strategy can be sharper than fists, and silence can speak louder than any confrontation. One quiet evening, I sat on my porch, sipping my tea, and thought about how easy it would have been to rage, to yell, to sever every tie with Evan forever.
But I didn't.
And in doing so, I found peace, a deeper peace than any victory could give me. Evan came by that evening, the first time he had been alone in my house since he was a teenager. He didn't run to me or beg forgiveness. He simply sat down and talked. And for the first time in many years, I listened.
And he listened.
Sometimes, the best revenge is not fire or fury. Sometimes, it is quiet.
Patient. Moral.
And when it is, it heals as much as it teaches. Because I have learned, after all these years, silence can expose the truth more fully than any anger. And sometimes, silence is the best revenge.